Hello everybody, welcome to StraightA, Dawson here, back with another video on the quarterly checkup. So we're going out of week 5. We still have the Packers-Raiders game going on today or tonight here in a couple hours, pish posh, kind of good stuff. But we're not going over either one of those cardinal directions today, because this is the quarterly review for the AFC, NFC East, or East. However you want to take it. East. I don't know where East is in my own cardinal direction room, but I do know that there are 8 teams on my screen here that are ready to be reviewed and kind of go over what are these teams kind of looking like already. So we have an extra week with these teams rather than the AFC, NFC North teams. That's fine. We're just going to roll with it and just keep on trucking on. Sound good? A little bit later upload too, so forgive me on that if you didn't want to watch a later video or if you didn't want to catch it on Tuesday or something instead. Oh well. But first of all, we have the AFC East. We have the Miami Dolphins, Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, and New England Patriots. All kind of conveniently 4-3-2-1 right now. Miami leading, Buffalo right behind, New York Jets right behind them, and New England right behind them. We're going to go a little bit out of order. I'm just going to kind of go as the flow takes me. I just kind of pull up the teams how they are. Actually, for good sake, we'll go with Miami first, then Buffalo, then Jets. I'll reorder them. That way we're kind of doing some nice stuff, and I'll do that the same with the East, whatever. So we'll start off with Miami. Of course, Miami has been off to a great start this year so far. Looking at their stats, Tua has been killing it. Like, 5 games, and they are just going. Over 300 yards a game, 322.8 yards a game. 11 touchdowns. That's insane. Like, a little over 2 touchdowns per game. That's not, like, amazingly, I guess, but, like, it's still pretty dang good. I guess it is pretty good. Pretty amazing, though. 5 interceptions, though, is a little high for this point in the season, but, like, when you're putting up the yardage he is, I think it can be kind of forgiven. But especially the defense picks up some of the pieces. But either way, we're seeing some really big carriers here for the rushing side too. It's not just the passing. The rushing has been killing it. 700 yards between Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, I believe is how you say it. I believe. I've heard a couple people say both, but I'm going to go with Achane. Or Acne. I'm just going to go Achane because it sounds cool. Achane. Achane has been killing it. I'm just going to call him Devon. Devon has been killing it. 12.1 yards on average for his rushings. 5 touchdowns while Raheem Mostert has 7. I know a lot of this has come from the Denver Broncos game, so it's a little inflated in that regard, but still stats. It's still what's going to be calculated at the end of the season, and they've been killing it. Honestly, even on the games that aren't blowouts, they've been killing it on the ground, and they've been killing it in the air. This team on offense is just the team to beat on offense. If you're going like score-wise, one-on-one with these guys, you got to be ready. Beside the point, Tyreek Hill, of course, being wide receiver 1, not surprising there. Jalen Waddle, being wide receiver 2 in yardage, not too surprising. Outside of that, though, pretty much nothing. They really have nobody outside of those two. Braxton is getting kind of involved. Raheem Mostert's kind of involved in the receiving game as well. But Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are the offense. And Tyreek Hill especially, 5 touchdowns right now. Surprised Jalen Waddle hadn't gotten more involved, but I guess he has been suffering from like an on and off injury. So take that as you will. Looking at their numbers down here for sacks and tackles for loss and stuff like that. A lot of sacks, surprisingly, for this team. It's a decent amount compiled all across the board. Not like Andrew Van Ginkel is kind of leading the team right here. A lot of good solo tackles, of course. Good tackles for loss. A lot of good tackles for loss as well. Interceptions, though, they are quite low. 2 interceptions throughout 5 games. I feel like that's a little bit on the lower side, but it's still not horrible. Forced fumbles. They have quite a few forced fumbles, though. I do believe one per game. That's pretty dang good. Now, in terms of their defense in general, we're going to take a look at that real quick. Where they kind of rate in the passing defense, what's called total yardage. Now, there are teams on buys and there are teams that haven't played, so it's going to be kind of skewed in some ways. I'll try to make note of it as best I can as time kind of goes on with it. So we're going to try to find the Dolphins here. Dolphins, I know on defense, haven't looked amazing. They've been able to do enough, but they're on the bottom half-ish or near the middle for defensive passing yards, which is fine. When you have an offense the way they do, the passing defense can kind of be just good. It can just be just fine. You know, when you have a good offense, you can just have a passable defense. Kind of the same case with defense. When you have a great defense, as long as you have a passable offense, you're able to kind of do a lot. You don't want to just have one skewed one way or the other completely. Now, the rushing defense feels like an on and off thing, at least watching the games. I could be totally wrong. That's why we kind of look over the stats here. It looks like they are very susceptible to the run. And it does look like they're similar to that. It looks like they might be a little bit lower in the run. Kind of still in the middle, though. So, I mean, they're still doing good things there. What's got 6 touchdowns on them on the run. I guess maybe that's what makes it kind of skewed, is I see a lot of that, a lot of the scores on them on the ground when I watch their games. Let's see other touchdowns in the passing game. I mean, they have had a lot of shootout games too, so it is kind of skewed in that way too. 7 touchdowns in the air from the opposing offenses, so a little bit interesting there. Looking at their schedule right now, they're 4-1, about to kind of go into a good skew of 4 tougher games. At least I would originally have said it's a tougher games. Carolina should be kind of an easier victory for them. Philadelphia, New England, Kansas City, all on paper should be hard. New England's kind of making me question a little bit of their stuff. I think I'm pretty solid against New England now. It's still a divisional game though, so I mean they could kind of slow it down. But I mean, as they show from the other New England game at New England, I think they feel pretty confident against that the scheme of that team, and even especially being in Miami and stuff like that. Week 8, I feel like Miami will finally kind of, or still take that win. Now, Philadelphia is going to be a very interesting game about really strong defense on Philadelphia, which we've seen when they get opposed to really, really good defenses and passable offenses, it's going to be hard for Miami to really keep up with a good balanced team like Buffalo showed. And Kansas City might be able to show that similar kind of duo there. I believe that's in Germany too. I can't remember. I think that one's definitely overseas, but I think that's in Germany. Maybe it's another one. So they're both going to be kind of in a different little place. So neither team's going to have like a home field advantage per se. So that will be a very fun game. So, but I still imagine they'll at least split those wins. So like 6-3, and probably even win one of these games. But I'm still going to give them the loss in both those games because I feel like those are very hard games. Outside of that, the only other game I feel like they might have some difficulty on is Dallas, but that's more on the defensive line, and they don't really need the run game if they can really get the overhead shots. I do see them losing maybe like a Baltimore game, throw in Buffalo, and maybe having 5 losses total, 12-5. Feels pretty reasonable, and I honestly kind of see that as their ceiling. I did say I was kind of against Miami in the beginning because I just didn't think, I thought they were going to be either explosive team or the worst team on earth. And now I am going to give this kind of vote of caution, is that this team feels like it's going to be on its way to explode. I don't know why. When you put up the points they do and do as well as they do for so long on offense. Now, granted, Buffalo shows maybe they slow down the gears. Honestly, that might be a good thing for Miami because I feel like when a team is so high octane and doesn't slow down and kind of take in the game a little bit more, they kind of just implode on themselves halfway through the season. And obviously the bye week happens, but I can see certain like dismantlings around week 13, 14, and then possibly kind of helping implode in this tough last 4 games. I mean, because New York, Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo are all tough defenses, and I feel like we can kind of see them get picked apart more and more as time goes on through 15 through 18, and with only a passable defense that could get weaker as the season goes on. It kind of feels a little bit wacky. I am going to lean on the side that they are on pace for about 11-6. And of course, I did say they were going to miss the playoffs. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs this year. Or I mean, they didn't miss it last year, but I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. I think they're actually going to be on really headway and possibly winning the division. I do think Buffalo's going to take it still. Buffalo looks really good overall, but Buffalo also shows a lot of cracks themselves, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Miami has been awesome this season, and I'm going to be more on the bandwagon of saying they're probably going to do pretty good for the rest of the season. Looking at the roster, we're just going to quickly look, or sorry, depth chart, that's what we should look at. We're just going to see if there's any big questionables. Actually, interestingly enough, I did not know Raheem Mostert and Devon are both on questionables. It's kind of interesting. I doubt it's anything very serious. It didn't look anything serious. Their defense still looks pretty healthy. Jalen Phillips is out, though, unfortunately. But other than that, I mean, they have a couple offensive line injuries and some random receiver injuries. But it looks like they're still pretty okay. I imagine Raheem Mostert and Devon are going to be fine. I didn't catch anything that was too crazy about that. So I'm still saying Miami's going to be about 11-6, 12-5 kind of posting mark. I'm going to go solid 11-6 right now just because I think they can drop a couple games, maybe have an implosion game. I'm just going to throw it in there and a couple other tough games. But 12-5 is definitely possible, and maybe we'll see that halfway through. Maybe I'll change my mind about that. But I'll go with 11-6 to be a little bit on the air of caution for the Miami Dolphins. Moving on to the team that humbled them just a little bit, the Buffalo Bills. Going to their stats right now, Josh Allen has been killing it. Actually, just a little bit less than Tua in terms of games. What, about like 40 yards per game off? I mean, that's not too bad. 11 touchdowns, so I think the same as Tua, I think. 5 interceptions, same as him. 9 sacks. I didn't check out Miami's sacks, so let's actually quickly take a look at that. Didn't really take into account their offensive line at all. He's only taken 6 sacks, so pretty good offensive line. I really haven't taken that much in note, but now that I think about it more and more, I mean, they do have a pretty good offensive line in Miami from people just in terms of name values. At least I thought they did. Never mind. I guess not. I guess it's another team I'm thinking about. I don't recognize any of these names, but obviously they're doing the job for Tua to get the ball off, so that's pretty cool. Just to show his completion percentage, too, out of curiosity, because I know that was like not a great one last year for him, but 71.7% is pretty dang good this year. Dang. Well, I don't know if there's much critiquing Tua in his play this year because he's been kind of killing it. But Josh Allen has still played overall better, a little bit higher completion percentage, good yardage. He has the rushing game too. Let's see, he's at 120 rushing yards, pretty dang good, with 3 rushing touchdowns already, by the way. Same amount of interceptions, but he is taking a couple more sacks. But that's the Bills O-line is still solid overall. The rushing game for them, of course, goes through Josh Allen a lot of times. So James Cook's doing a suitable job. 4.8 yards on average, pretty dang good. 1 touchdown for him as well. In the receiving game against the Stephon Diggs game, but Gabe Davis has been surprisingly still involved. I thought he was going to go off the rails a little bit, but 4 touchdowns, 320 yards, pretty dang good for him. He got really involved one game, forgot exactly which one it was. James Cook still in the receiving game. Dalton Kincaid has been a nice little supplementary one, but outside of that, really, it's those first 4 and a couple other people as time goes on. In terms of defensive sacks and stuff like that, I mean, it's been led by Leonard Floyd for the most part. Tackles for loss, Ed Oliver has been killing it. I don't know why. I forgot he was on the Buffalo Bills for some reason. And Greg Rousseau also was going to be leading it, or has been leading it. I thought Greg Rousseau was going to be the top tackles for loss, but Ed Oliver, of course, exists, so that makes a lot of sense. In terms of interceptions, so they have been killing it on turnovers. What's called 6, 7, 8 interceptions within 5 games. Heck of a time there. Only 1 touchdown on them, and I meant to click forced fumbles. They have gotten a lot of forced fumbles, but how many have they recovered actually? Wow, 5. So they've gotten, holy crap, how many turnovers was that? 5 plus 8, 13. I can do simple math probably. 13 turnovers in 5 games. That's so good for the Buffalo defense. Buffalo defense has been certainly killing it, and I'm actually curious where their stats kind of line up in terms of yardage, which it should be on the lower end. I mean, right? And this is rushing, or this is passing yards. Passing yards like top 10-ish. I mean, that's pretty dang good. 956 compared to like the Browns, Packers, and all that. This should be updated, I'm pretty sure, for this week, but it may not be. Not just kind of going with the NFL's current stats log. Buffalo's rushing defense actually is not as good as I thought it would be. I guess they have faced some harder run defenses, or run offenses, I should say. So I guess it kind of makes sense, but their run offense actually not as good as I thought. But pass rushing has been really good, and their overall secondary has been good. So I think they can afford one little chink in the armor. But speaking of schedule, let's actually look at the games. I guess I could have looked at Miami's games too. We'll go back and do that after Buffalo, just so I can kind of do a complete scan of it all. Buffalo, of course, lost in New York, which, again, that was a very just weird game overall for them. Slow start, but they killed Vegas. They killed Washington. They killed Miami. They did take a loss to Jacksonville. In a very unfortunate game, they still played very well, but Jacksonville just had a good game, and Buffalo probably had a couple other factors. It's an off game, off week, but they didn't look awful, so I don't expect too much bad from them. Otherwise, they are 3-2. Definitely worse starts to the season going on somewhere else, but they have a fairly easier schedule in the immediate future. New York, New England, Tampa Bay, and Cincinnati could all this is normally, I would say this is a pretty hard next 4 games. But New York Giants haven't been doing good, so should be an easy win. New England has been suffering a lot, so should be an easier win. Tampa Bay, I don't think stack up to very good teams very often. Maybe they could surprise us, but I still think Buffalo's going to take it. Cincinnati, we'll see where their kind of trend is at week 9. Sometimes they are kind of showing flashes. They show flashes this week, but against Buffalo and the state that Buffalo's kind of been going in, Buffalo's kind of been on top a lot of times. So I'm going to give a leaning to Buffalo, but that's definitely a loss they could probably take. Denver, definitely easy win. New York Jets, again, I don't think they're going to be nearly as susceptible to them as they were the first time. I think they can easily take that, especially in Buffalo. Philadelphia is going to be a harder fought game. One of those teams will have to lose. I'm going to lean that it's going to be Philadelphia just because I feel like at that point Josh Allen and the Bills. Now, granted, they'll be kind of tired. I don't know when Philadelphia's bye week is, but I feel like I like the matchup with Buffalo's overall passing game versus the Philadelphia defense, secondary-wise at least. I feel like the run game isn't as focal for the Bills, and they're much more adaptable. Then again, Philadelphia is just as adaptable. I'm going to give the lean very, very lean right now to the Buffalo. But, I mean, still a loss they can take. Cincinnati, Philadelphia, probably going to drop one of the games of Kansas City and Dallas. And we'll say drop a Miami game. So that's 4 or 5 losses. Could be just if you throw in a random game. So that's, 5 losses to their current 2 losses. So it's 10-7. I am going to lean that they're going to go 11-6. I think they're going to tie the Miami Dolphins, and it's going to come down to whether they win this other one, and it comes down to the other tiebreaker. I forgot exactly what that is. But, I'm just going to kind of err on the side of caution, but I'm still saying they're going to end up 11-6. I feel like they're just dominating performance. 4 losses and a couple tough games. They can probably win, but they might drop a random one as well. Never know with the NFL, but they are doing really, really solid, and they honestly haven't had that many bad games. Open their season, Josh Allen had an off game. Oh, well, happens. In terms of depth chart, in terms of injuries and stuff like that, I did not know Dalton Kincaid was questionable, and Dawson Knox, I didn't realize he was above him on the depth chart. I did not know that, so that's kind of interesting for me. Greg Rousseau's out though. I did not know that one either. I don't keep up with the Buffalo Bills very often, not as much as I probably should. It's more of a family thing for me, so kind of seeing this on the paper, it's kind of interesting. But they actually are suffering from pretty key injuries. Tre'Davious White, Matt Milano, Shaq Lawson. I actually don't know Shaq Lawson. Thought it was somebody else for a second. And Greg Rousseau now, Daquan Jones. Okay, we'll see how injuries kind of stack up for them. Right now, they're not really showing any weakness in that regard, but it could be something long term that could affect them. Just so we cover our bases, though, I'm going to go back to Miami real quick and look at their schedule from the last 5 games, just to at least acknowledge it. Los Angeles was a blood battle of just back and forth, back and forth. New England was just slobber knocker. Denver was a freaking slaughter. Buffalo was a harder matchup against a good balanced team, which shows a clink in their armor. And New York Giants, just a nice little scrimmage for them to kind of get ready for next time. Anyway, we do have the next team who are 2-3 in the division, or not division, I guess 2-3 in general. The New York Jets, who are very overall a lot to take in for this team. And I'm not saying I have this team figured out, but this team, I think is kind of leaning to where they were last year. I think they hope for Aaron Rodgers to really come in and make it something different this year, but I think by him not being there and the offense kind of being iffy, the defense is kind of playing a step down, at least on paper, or at least on watching the games. It's kind of playing down a little bit. This team is looking into that 7-10 ratio, and we'll look at their schedule and find out whether I really think that. But Zach Wilson has just not been it. 61.1% completion percentage, not great. 911 yards. Not great either. Not playing up to the great ones. 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's not a great ratio, of course. 14 sacks. Offensive line has been letting him down just a little bit, but more in key moments, I guess, because 14 is not a ton, I guess. About 3 sacks per game, almost. Breece Hall has finally kind of unleashed this last game. He really padded the yardage, but before this, he really wasn't a factor. Dalvin Cook really hasn't been a factor either. Run game has not been anything for the Jets. The pass game hasn't been anything, so their offense has kind of struggled a little bit. The receiving game's kind of everybody. Garrett Wilson's still, of course, the main focus point, but Alan Lazard has been getting a little bit of love. Tyler Conklin has been getting a little love, but overall, it's pretty much kind of an even split between a lot of these other guys. Breece Hall's kind of getting some love. Dalvin Cook a little bit looks, so pretty good there. In terms of the defensive side of things, this is what I kind of say that they haven't looked great because they haven't done anything big. They haven't done anything flashy, which, I mean, they don't have to if they just stop the run and stop the pass, but, they're not getting to the passer. Tackles for loss, they have been doing really good, though. I'm not surprised with Quincy Williams and Quinnen Williams both throwing me off there, but both Williams doing really well. Jermaine Johnson still doing well over there. Interceptions, they have picked off quite a bit. Jordan Whitehead in one game, of course, got all 3 of those, so that's a little skewed, but still 5 picks is 5 picks. Forced fumbles, they have gotten a few forced fumbles, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 recovered for a touchdown this last recent game against the Broncos. Of course, I got to keep saying that. So defense on paper has been fine. This hasn't been bad or anything, it looks like. But let's look at their defense on the other side of the yard, the actual yardage paper, I guess. The Jets are somewhere near the bottom. Wow, in terms of rushing, Woo, 4th right now. And the Steelers, Giants, and Bengals, and Panthers, and Bills, all them haven't had bye weeks, I don't believe, or haven't had like a big thing. So like they're bottom 5. That's kind of crazy. I'll look at their schedule and see what kind of rushing games they've been playing. But wow, and I guess I had to do that for Buffalo because I was kind of curious for Buffalo being that low. So we'll do that too after the Jets. But see, they're in the air yardage, which should be a little bit better because I think they've been a lot better for that. No, let's see. No, they're still somewhere in the middle. They're probably in the upper half, roughly. I'm not going to count roughly, but they're somewhere in the middle. So not too bad in terms of their defensive yardage given. In terms of schedule, the teams they've been playing were Buffalo, Dallas, New England, Kansas City, and Denver. A lot to take in there, but those aren't bad offenses in terms of both the run game and the in the air game. So, I'll give them a little bit of credit there. New England probably the weakest team they played so far, probably definitely. But the fact they got 2 wins in this tough schedule, actually, pretty impressive kind of looking on paper. I mean, obviously against Denver they should have gotten it, but 1 win here, I guess you should expect at least 1 win in this kind of mishmash. But still interesting to see. They do have quite a tough schedule, which I thought with Aaron Rodgers may have been more inclined to be for them. But against Philadelphia, against Los Angeles, maybe even a drop to like Las Vegas, Buffalo probably could take them on. Again, Miami probably could sweep them, but I'll give them 5 losses total from all that so far. Houston or Atlanta probably could drop them 1, so that's 6 right there. Cleveland probably could drop them 1, 7. And New England could do something, so that's about 8. But like 7 to 8 more losses I could easily see. Maybe you could lean 6, maybe you can lean 8. I'm going to go 7 more losses, and that would put them right at 7 and 10. Kind of solid, where I would say. I mean, they're just kind of out of it at this point, unless something big changes on after Philadelphia or after the bye week. They're kind of on trend for that offense to kind of take them down. The defense, I don't think, can keep up with some of these harder offenses. A lot of good offenses here, a lot of low-key good offenses too. Good defenses against a really bad offense as well. I mean, it's just a lot of good balanced teams they're facing, and I mean, even Washington can kind of up and kind of take them on in some regards. So, not an easy schedule. I mean, their easiest team they're playing is probably the Giants, Washington, and Atlanta, and Las Vegas. But those are teams that feel like they're easily on their caliber. No more Denver Broncos, no more the Bears, no more Cardinals, no more Panthers. They really don't have that anymore. Like the game that should be a give me for them, but we'll see how it turns out for them. Again, they face some good offenses there. Looking at their depth chart and their injuries, wow, a lot of defensive injuries. I don't know many of these names. Doesn't look like many too important names in this regard, but of course Aaron Rodgers, the most important I've seen. But it looks like they're still pretty healthy on the starter side of things, but still a lot of depth problems there, a lot of depth issues in terms of injuries. So that's kind of interesting to see. A lot of injuries. Going to quickly go back to Buffalo and backtracking to see how the teams in terms of rushing, whether that makes sense that they are kind of suffering from that, which not terribly. I mean, they haven't faced that good of. I mean, Travis Etienne had a good game against them. Josh Jacobs, I don't think had a good game. I think that was kind of skewed. Jacksonville is really the one real rush, offense they really faced. I mean, Miami probably had a good game too on the ground, so they had to. I don't know. Interesting. Maybe the Buffalo Bills don't have a great, rush defense in that regard. Interesting. Either way, we do have one more team in the AFC East, and that's the New England Patriots. It's just, I mean, that defines the New England Patriots right there with Mac Jones on screen there. Man, I don't know what the Patriots do anymore. I had hope for them this week, but I think Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, the whole offense killed it for me. Their defense isn't just playing up to what they used to. And they're 1-4, and that doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon. We'll look at their stats real quick. We can kind of split with Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones a little bit, but Bailey Zappi, of course, has a much smaller sample size. But 38.9% percentage for Bailey Zappi, 62.5 for Mac Jones, a little over 1,000 yards for Mac Jones, so a little bit better than Zach Wilson in that regard. That's anything. 201.6 yards per game, 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Not great ratio. The offensive line's been fine. 10 sacks total for their passers. So, Rushing, not really anything. Ramondre Stevenson's kind of done a little bit. Ezekiel Elliott has kind of been a little bit of a factor as well, but not really anything too special, especially with the averages here. Receiving is everywhere. Kendrick Bourne's kind of leading. Hunter Henry is right behind him. Touchdowns, that's kind of all they really wrote there. Pharaoh Brown also apparently got a touchdown. Good for him. Good to see. but it's been very quiet for them. Sacks, I'm actually very curious about this because I don't know. Matthew Judon, okay, not surprising. A couple good sacks, Tackles for loss, good amount of tackles for loss too. All right, I like to see it. So our defense is still doing fine. Christian Gonzalez got his 1 interception, and let's see how many forced fumbles. Like 1 fumble recovered. They're just not turning the ball over, and that hurts a lot. And they're turning the ball over a lot too. So it's really hard for the defense to carry for so long. Actually, their defensive line's doing better than their what's called secondary in just that paper regards. But looking at the yardage right now for the Patriots. By the way, Browns have a really big gap. Of course, they have a bye week, but still a pretty big gap considering the Raiders and Packers both haven't played either. And they're about to play and put up the yardage and all that. But beside the point, I guess they still have a bye week. But 200-yard gap pretty much is still quite a bit. Not 200, 300 yard. Holy crap for the passing game. We'll get to them later, but whatever. Beside the point. We'll talk about that later. Sorry, that's my point. Moving on, though, talking about the Patriots. Patriots defense, on paper, passing has been fine, though. They've been covering. I'm kind of curious how their matchups kind of been playing against that. But in losses, they've still had a decent defense. And we'll check out the scores for them, too. But very interesting in that regard. I'm now curious about their rush defense, how that's been doing. Which, I mean, it's somewhere in the middle. It's right there at the bottom here. Okay, so suitable. 540 rush yards. I mean, that's fine. Now let's see how their schedule kind of lines up for that. And they played some tough offenses and defenses in that fairness. I guess they've had it easier last 3 games, but New Orleans kind of kicked their butt, so that probably inflated the stats a little bit. Philadelphia and Miami weren't easy though. And in New York, they did pick up a win there. In Dallas, of course, not an easy game there either. But they're just not putting up the points. If you look, I mean, they're putting up 20 points is the most they put up, and they've gone down every game. 2017, 10, 3, 0. I mean, it has to be going up from here, but man, that's tough. That's tough. I'm curious how to see how Las Vegas plays this week to see how they could probably play and keep up. But the Patriots are on pace. I mean, I'm someone like who supports them and the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are both teams that just somehow get too close to like 500 area. Now, Pittsburgh obviously has been over 500 a lot before, but I mean, New England kind of is more susceptible to that 7-10, 6-11 type spots. I mean, we've seen them in that spot before, especially since losing Tom Brady. I mean, and looking at their schedule, I mean, they could win a Las Vegas, Washington, maybe split there. They could win in Indianapolis, New York, split there. I'm going to give them New York and Indianapolis because New York, I think, has just been really pitiful. So that's 3 wins and a win against Denver. And that's even kind of iffy because I think they're kind of getting on the same level at this point. But I'm going to give them the win in Denver. Maybe I got to give them a loss in New York, I think. Man, I guess it is at home. I don't know. 4 or 5 losses or 4 or 5 wins I can see them getting. That puts them at 5-12, 6-11. I'm gonna aim at 6-11 for my prediction for them for the rest of the season. And man, it's not looking good. I mean, the schedule isn't tough, but like they're just playing down to their opponent. Like they can lose teams like Washington and New York, and they shouldn't beat teams like Pittsburgh and Los Angeles, but they might be able to. Is the thing that's making me lean 6-11, but I just don't see them doing anything too splashy. They're not a horribly faced team, but their offense has to figure out something to keep them in the game just a little bit more. And maybe that's in the draft, maybe that's in free agency, maybe that's just a whole nother remodeling for the whole offensive scheme. Who knows? But New England Patriots are facing a pretty good catastrophe here. Injuries have been kind of piling up, actually, a little low-key. Christian Gonzalez also on IR, of course, unfortunately. Juju is questionable, but I'm sure he's fine. I don't remember anything hearing from him. That was too bad. Mike Onwenu, I don't know how to say his last name, but a couple little small injuries there. But it's really depth issues they might be facing long-term in terms of a lot of this, unfortunately. So we'll see how New England kind of goes forward, but I think it's safe to say that New England's kind of on the down and down right now, and they've been on the down and down for a hot minute just because I think they don't like change. I think they just have not adapted to new change and they haven't really gone in the upward direction, much to the Denver Broncos, and very similarly. Either way, we're moving on to the NFC now with the East. Of course, Philadelphia will be our first team we'll look at. 5-0. They're right now undefeated. They've been killing it this season. They killed it last season. It's not that much of a surprise in that regard, so we'll kind of quickly go through them. I mean, they've been just doing good football. Nothing like too splashy. Jalen Hurts has been good. 67.3% completion, 1,200 yards. 6 touchdowns feels a little low, but I guess 5 games makes a little sense. 4 interceptions, not horrible, but could be better. 12 sacks. I guess the offensive line has let up more than they should. Run game has been good. 2 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns from Jalen Hurts on the ground too, who's been killing it in the run game. Receiving, AJ Brown's kind of getting to his new normal self. Devonta Smith is still kind of getting open, getting those looks in the end zone. Dallas Goedert's doing really well. I did not expect that as well, but DeAndre Swift, I mean, they just have a really good overall offensive scheme going on. Defensively, I mean, they look amazing too. I'm curious how their actual numbers look now. Not as many sacks, but I guess they're not really a sack-heavy team, though. They're really just kind of a stuff-heavy team. So I'm kind of curious how their tackles for loss compare. Nicholas Morrow kind of leading that, but overall, I mean, yeah, it's good. I mean, again, everything just is good. I don't know why I clicked that. I meant to click interceptions. 2 interceptions could be better, but could be worse. Fumble recoveries, they have made the ball fumble a lot. I guess that is kind of in hindsight looking back. They have made the ball fumble a lot. So that's actually a really good upside for them in this team. But there's nothing like too splashy. There's nothing like I'm just like, oh my gosh, this guy's doing amazing. I mean, they're doing good. Everybody's doing good. And that's what you need from your team overall. In terms of schedule, actually, let's look at their stats too. I mean, wow, they have the second lowest rushing yards right now, and the Browns have the next up, and they didn't play a game. So arguably, they have probably the best rush defense right now. Passing defense probably should be somewhat similarly, but probably more what's it called? In the middle. Oh, excuse me. Actually, passing defense actually is on the lower end. Might be. It doesn't seem like that, but I guess they played more explosive, fun, higher scoring games in a lot of regards. 1,238 yards is a lot, though, for their secondary to let up. So maybe their secondary is kind of the weaker point for them. It's looking like. Looking at their schedule, though, let's see if they face pass-heavy teams, which they have. I mean, Minnesota and the Rams. Never mind, they really haven't. So they just kind of let up a lot of yards. I guess Washington, they also kind of skewed them because that was a really good game from almost said Desmond Ridder, because I always mix up Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell. Sam Howell had a really decent game that game. So, and they almost let up the loss. I mean, Washington does that. I mean, they randomly get a win there. Beside the point, look, I mean, they're 5-0. It's not much better you can do, and I don't see them taking too many losses, but they got a tough little low-key schedule here, like 12 through like 15-ish. 11 through 15, actually, after their bye week. I mean, they could lose to Dallas. I mean, they could lose to any of these teams, but like, I see them losing one of these games before the bye week. I see them going like, into the bye week 8-1. I don't see them sweeping all these teams. New York, that should be an easier win. Washington should normally be an easier win, but we've seen them drop the win before, so they could split, but I think they kind of match up well against Miami. I think they can play well against Dallas, who's proven to be a weaker team against the 2 top teams, the 49ers and Eagles. So in that regard, who knows? I'm going to give them 1 loss, though, there. I'm going to say in these next, 4 games here, I think we've seen that the Eagles kind of slow down a little bit in the later season. I mean, I'm not saying they will again and be a really bad team or anything, but they do slow down. And I do see them splitting in these 4 games, whether it's against San Fran and Buffalo or Dallas and Kansas City. I see them splitting wins there and getting 3 losses total at that point. And I see them losing one of these games. It's probably going to be against Seattle, but never know. New York can randomly do one. So I see 4 losses, and that's a pretty dang good record. I don't see them dropping a whole lot more. I mean, 14-3, 13-4. I see 13-4 being in their future as being the record that they hold, and that's pretty dang good. It's probably going to be the second best record I ever see. But 14-3 is definitely possible as well. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and go 13-4 just as they slow down, I feel like. But 14-3, I would not be out of the realm of possibilities. In terms of depth, they shouldn't be suffering too much. I mean, a little bit. Fletcher Cox is out right now, but no, I don't think it's long-term. And a couple defensive ones, but offensive line ones kind of. Overall, they're still very healthy. Overall, I mean, they're ready to go. There's not too much to talk about there with the Philadelphia Eagles, to be honest with you. And I believe Dallas Cowboys are up next at 3-2. Showing their stats, and man, Dak Prescott is kind of the story here. I mean, I used to really defend Dak Prescott, and I still will err on the side of caution and defend him. But, 4 interceptions, 3 of those coming from last game. He was doing so well in that regard, but now he's kind of slowing down. He's just a suitable quarterback. Their defense is absolutely carrying them. The defense, no matter what the numbers say here to me, this defense looks like the top defense. I mean, I'm going to say second best defense after the 49ers. But I mean, up there with the Eagles. It's up there with the Eagles on like when you watch them play, just because of the amount of turnovers and the pressure they can put against any team that's outside the top 10, they will destroy. It seems like it doesn't seem like they'll let up those games, but it's hard for them, similar to the Bucks, to play up to their opponent. And maybe the Cowboys aren't as like a top 5 team as they should be. You know, they seem like a top 5 team, but they just don't play like it. Their run game is fine through Tony Pollard, but he's not doing amazing. Outside of Tony Pollard, there's really nothing. Dak has been doing fine. Outside of interceptions, he's been doing good. But, you know, he's let up a couple sacks, whatever. That's not too bad there. Receiving, I mean, CeeDee Lamb's kind of the main guy. Michael Gallup's kind of gotten involved. I mean, some people have kind of gotten involved. CeeDee Lamb's kind of the one guy, but even he's not doing really amazing. I mean, they haven't had to do amazing in terms of some of their games, but in the games they really should be doing amazing, they really don't. I'm really curious to see all these numbers because I have not seen the numbers on paper with all the numbers piled up for how many sacks and how many fumbles and interceptions they've gotten. But I'm kind of curious on paper how this actually looks. And 4, 5, like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, a lot of sacks, 15 sacks, sorry. A lot of decent sacks. I'm going to probably, yeah, that looks fine. I'll probably do that. There you go. Probably do a little bit of zoom-in. Probably should have done that sooner, but whatever. 15 sacks is not too bad. Like, it's pretty dang good. I mean, it's just more evenly distributed. I think a lot of other teams we see more sacks from like a focal point of the team, but this is just a good overall sack team. Interceptions, oh wow, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I did not realize it was that many. Holy crap. When did all those come from? The last 5 games. So a little over 1 interception per game. 2 of those leading to a touchdown. All right, Deron Bland. All right, don't know who you are, but heck yeah. Forced fumbles, also very curious now. A lot of forced fumbles. Holy crap. Only 3 fumble recoveries, though, of those forced fumbles. So they're putting some pressure, and they're getting turnovers after turnovers, and they're just killing teams. I mean, that's pretty impressive through 5 games, to be honest with you. And looking at their kind of defensive scoring here, they should definitely be on both sides, kind of an upper end team, top 5 easily on the passing defense, and I imagine the same for the rushing defense for the most part. Actually not. They're somewhere in the middle, kind of in the bottom half, actually. Wow, they don't play good against the run, apparently. Let's see what kind of run teams they've been facing, though, too. We'll go to their schedule now. They played against New York and New York. Obviously, they had Saquon at that time for the Giants. James Conner did play well in Arizona. New England, I don't remember a good rushing game from Rondre Stevenson or Zeke there, but maybe Zeke had a better one. And I guess San Fran, I guess in that second half, kind of just no one really cared. So maybe that's kind of interesting. Maybe their rush defense or their rushing, run blocking, not run blocking, rush defense. Yeah, that's the right word. Getting kind of drained here. It's just not as good as maybe that's kind of the weakness of the defense. But otherwise, their defense is great. Offense just suffers. I mean, when you see in this game like against Arizona, they just couldn't get anything going. The defense couldn't carry them, and the offense couldn't capitalize. And same with San Fran. The defense did as much as they could, but the offense kind of let up a lot. This wasn't the defense's fault for San Fran because there was 3 turnovers from Dak Prescott alone. So that's just kind of a rough place to be in. New England. All these other games, New York, and New England. Wow, all the news. Put your money on freaking New York, and then to beat New York again too. Dang, are just all from the defense. Nothing that really comes from the offense here, and we'll see if that changes for Los Angeles, and then they have a bye week. But yikes, it's just kind of a tough thing to see. Now I still think they're going to do fine. I still think probably just on gut feeling, they're probably going to go 11-6, 10-7 area. I could see them dropping a Rams-Chargers game, one of those 2 games. Probably Chargers more so than the Rams, but I could see them losing probably to Philadelphia, splitting wins there. I would say they split, so that's 2 losses there. I see them probably losing to Buffalo, Miami. I'll give them both the losses there, so that's 4 losses total. Maybe against Detroit. I'm going to err on the side of caution and say they'll probably beat Detroit. It could be a tough game, though, for both of those teams. I'll toss that one to Aaron to say 5 losses. So 5 total losses right there. And that's leading them to a 10-7. I think that's a comfortable 10-7. I think 11-6 is really where they could be. And I'll say 11-6 as my prediction, just because I think the Cowboys always perform to that level. Whether we like it or not, whether you like the Cowboys or not, they do perform to that level. And that's kind of how I feel like they'll kind of end up being. But they have an easier matchups kind of in the middle here, and then they got a tougher end, and then better beginning. Again, Washington's sneaky. We'll talk about Washington in a minute, but Washington can slowly kind of randomly win games they probably shouldn't. In terms of injuries, they actually are very good on injuries here. Well, I guess depth-wise, not as great. Trevon Diggs, of course, is out for a while, I think, right? I forgot exactly how that injury turned out. But most of their starters are still fine, so Dallas is still good injury-wise. I mean, they never really suffer too much from long-term injuries. Still kind of intriguing to see the Dallas Cowboys, and we'll see how the rest of their season really goes. Probably I'll go with Washington for next. Have them in the wrong order there. This is a team that just doesn't wow me. It's surprising to see that he has 1,300 yards, but Sam, like, I don't know. I don't know what to think about this team at all. I mean, I do. I think they're just kind of a bland team who lose games they shouldn't and randomly win games they shouldn't. Yeah, they win games they shouldn't and they lose games they shouldn't. That's how the team really operates. Sam Howell is, I don't care what the stats say, he's not the guy. He doesn't look comfortable, doesn't look good. And, I mean, like, overall, looking at this team, doesn't look very impressive. Six touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 29 sacks. Holy moly. Teams have been eating him up, dude. In 5 games, holy moly. Flip, dude, that's 6 sacks per game. Oh, my God. That offensive line is not doing him good at all. So maybe that's part of why Sam Howell doesn't have a trust in the offensive line. He's fine. He's fine. 1,349 yards is pretty dang good. So I can't really fault him there. But his touchdown to interception ratio isn't good. The offensive line obviously is probably a big problem there for them. The run game is suitable. Brian Robinson's fine. Sam Howell's decent on the ground. Receiving, I mean, they have Scary Terry. Curtis Samuel, low-key good. Just saying, he's better than Jahan Dawson. Not saying that because of fantasy a bias, because he actually probably won me a game. Logan Thomas also really getting involved, doing really good. In terms of defense, I mean, we'll see. I haven't seen their numbers. So Montez Sweat, 4.5 sacks. Actually, decent amount of sacks the team's getting going on for the defensive line, which I guess I'm not too surprised about because I knew they have a decent pass rush. I mean, with Chase Young and Montez Sweat, I mean, that's not too surprising. Tackles for loss also pretty good. Interceptions should be on the lower side. 2 interceptions, not too bad. Fumble recoveries, they got 3. I'm guessing they got like 5 total. Yeah, 5 and 3. So good turnovers. So their defense is kind of doing pretty well in that regard. Let's see how they kind of stack up over here. Washington right there near the bottom half in terms of pass defense. No, rush defense. Sorry, I always mix them up. So bottom half there. I mean, they're good at the pass rush, but not the run defense. We'll just say run defense. And then the receiving defensive side of things. Oh, passing side of things. That's the right one. Maybe 8 teams is a little too many to do in one video, especially in one cut. Probably should edit these videos more, but I just don't have the time. Also on the lower end of side of things, so they're able to kind of get the turnovers and kind of play to their opponent in that regard, but like in terms of the actual numbers they're allowing, not too great, and that may be skewed from the teams they've played. Let's see, because they have played some decent teams. Buffalo, Philadelphia being the only 2, I guess, because Denver, Arizona, and Chicago are 3 of the worst teams, and they dropped the loss to Chicago, which definitely shouldn't have happened. I mean, they won. I mean, I guess in this regard, they won games they should have, and they've lost games they should have. So Chicago really is the only point of inference I have there of saying they dropped a game they shouldn't have right now. I guess historically, it's just in my brain now that the Commanders are just a team that drop wins that they shouldn't, and then win games they shouldn't as well. Because, I mean, they broke Philadelphia's win streak last year. Arguably, they shouldn't have. So kind of intriguing in that regard. Looking at their schedule, though, they have such a good schedule until, 18-17, which those teams may not care at that point. Who knows? So, who knows in this regard. I don't see them winning a whole lot of games, though. For some reason, teams just play, like, similarly played teams. Now, obviously, I think they played down to the Arizona, Denver, and Chicago. Or not played down, I shouldn't say. I should say they played worse teams on paper than them, definitely, in those 3 teams. And they played teams that are definitely better than them in Buffalo and Philadelphia. But now we're kind of getting into the zone of them playing kind of decent teams like Atlanta, New York Giants, New England probably is on the down and down, but maybe by that point, who knows? Seattle's probably just a little bit better than them. Well, no, they're probably a decent bit better than them. But then they get into a harder schedule here from 12 to 18. Later bye week as well. Is that the latest bye week? Is 14 the last bye week? I believe it is. But the Rams are a better team. Your Jets are probably somewhere on their level. They're kind of starting to play teams now who might be matching up well to them on the level-wise. So I see them dropping one win. I see them not winning against Atlanta. I see them splitting with New York Giants, so we'll go with that. 2 losses so far. See them losing against Philadelphia. I know they broke it last year. Don't see it happening again. So that's 3 losses there. New England, I see them winning. Seattle, I'll say they lose, so it's 4. Dallas, I'm going to say they lose 5. Miami, I say they lose 6. But then here in the last 4 weeks, just for the sake of it, I'm going to say they win 2 of these games, so they lose 2. I'm going to say they lose 2 of these games just because I think that one of these teams won't care, or they might randomly get a win up here. And so I'll be 8 losses total, or 8 losses plus a 3, 6-11. That seems kind of low because I definitely thought they would be a little bit better than that, but I guess not. The Washington Commanders have been really suffering. 6-11 is pretty comfortable with me saying that. 7-10 could be, 5-12 could be, but 6-11 feels good. In terms of injuries, we'll check it out, but I don't know of anything too much. Whoa, defense has some depth issues here. Anybody I know? Nope, not really. Mathis, I saw Mathis and was like, oh my gosh, Mathis? I don't know where I know Mathis from, but whatever. So whatever. Washington Commanders overall just don't move me, and I see them being a mediocre team who randomly wins a couple of games against good teams and then lose a couple other games. And finally, to the New York Giants, who have probably one of the worst starts to a season they could. This is probably the Giants we thought that should be last year because they just are not doing good. Honestly, they could almost be 0-5. Those Cardinals almost deserve that win more than the Giants in that game, but well, that's neither here or there. They are 1-4. Looking at their stats, Danny Dimes, man, 884 yards passing. Rushing yards, he is leading there. Darren Waller's their biggest receiver, which is not too surprising, I guess. 69% basically completion percentage here for Daniel Jones. 2 touchdowns. Wow, I did not realize he only passed for 2 touchdowns. Wow, that's kind of sucky. 6 interceptions. Not great to that ratio at all. He's the leading rusher. Of course, Saquon's been out, so that's kind of a little bit skewed. But Matt Breida and nobody else, Eric Gray or anybody, has been able to pick that up. No, not really much in the rushing touchdowns either. Receiving, Darren Waller's the most, but even then, he just gets the most targets. So take that as you will. Other receivers are pretty much nothing, doing nothing. Defensively, he shouldn't be doing anything either. Wow, Kayvon Thibodeau, I believe is that Thibodeau. I'm gonna say Thibodeau. Thibodeau has gotten 4 sacks. That's the most, but even that's not too impressive compared to other numbers being put up right now. 2 interceptions, not amazing, but not awful, I guess. 1 other turnover, so they have like 3 turnovers total. On that paper, they're not doing well. Giants, I imagine looking at this number won't make them too happy either. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom probably. They're somewhere in the bottom half, so they're not doing awful. They could be doing worse in the passing defense. The rushing defense, let's see. I'm actually curious. I'm curious about all these teams. You know, this is equal rights, equal fights. Very near bottom. Not surprised there. I mean, Denver Broncos, of course, have that 1 spot right now solidified, but right there, top 5 easy in terms of rushing yards led up. Not surprised at all. In terms of their schedule, we'll look ahead a little bit for them because I don't think that. I mean, if they face hard teams, don't get me wrong. They face Miami, they face Arizona, they face Dallas. But when you play so bad in Arizona against Arizona, it just skews your thoughts so badly. And Seattle, like, they just don't compete at all with these teams. Miami had the best fight, but even then, it wasn't really a fight. It was more like a whimper. I mean, they just didn't do anything. They get blown out by the Dallas Cowboys, and then they get almost blown out by the Cardinals in the first half. Well, they did get blown out in the first half, but they just capitalized and came back in the second half, which showed a little bit of life in them. They just have not been doing anything, and I'm starting to get less and less high on them, and as time goes on. I thought they have a good coaching scheme, so they might be able to pick up something. And they do have a harder schedule. I'm not going to say they don't, but I mean, I kind of said this in the beginning of the season where I could see them being in that 9-8 range, but honestly, it's a lot lower now because they have such a hard schedule. I mean, like, they face off against 4 very difficult teams already. Buffalo's a hard team. Washington could randomly split with them, or not randomly, they probably will split with them. Dallas could probably beat them. I mean, Green Bay's not an easy win. New Orleans not an easy win. Philadelphia twice. I mean, again, 18 could be anything. That Week 18 matchup against Philadelphia could be an easy win, depending on how much Philadelphia cares. And the Rams aren't an easy victory or at all anymore. I mean, they don't have an easy schedule at all. I don't think they're going to win against Buffalo. I think they take a loss there, split with Washington. I mean, say they split one of the next 2 games on Week 8 and 9. Good God, I'm itchy on my nose right now. Probably lose to Dallas again, I'm going to say. Just because I have so little confidence in them playing against the Cowboys. Uh, New England, they'll get a win there. We'll say they split between Green Bay and New Orleans. They lose against Philadelphia once, but we'll give them another win there. And they lose against Los Angeles Rams. So that's 7 more losses, and right now they have 4. I mean, that's not good. 6-11, and that feels a little generous. I feel like 5-12 almost could be better, but I'm gonna give them 6-11, leaning 5-12 almost, but 6-11 is kind of where I see them being. In terms of their depth chart and everything right now, I mean, I did not know Daniel Jones is currently questionable. That's interesting. But otherwise, they're not really facing too much because those are all minor injuries, I'm sure. Nothing too... wow, they do have a lot of... it's kind of crazy, though. They have a lot of starters that are actually maybe hurt. Gosh, my nose is itchy this day. Kind of interesting, though. Wow, their offensive line's kind of suffering a lot. And their defensive line... Interesting. Huh. I guess more... should be more that for defensive line or whatever. Beside the point. Oh my gosh, I'm not cutting this out. I'm gonna let y'all see how red my nose is getting. Holy crap! I'm not sick. I'm just itchy. Maybe this little mustache is doing too much, or maybe I just been yammering too long. It's been a longer video. I feel like. Yeah, New York Giants. I don't see very good outlook for them at all. This has been the basically the establishment of the East. A lot of good, a lot of bad. I will say a lot of possibly good teams in the middle, like a couple good teams in the middle, but some upper echelon teams. We've been talking about Miami, the Bills, what's it called, the Eagles. I mean, we talked about a lot of good teams, but we also talked about a lot of bad teams, and maybe it's just because of the division they're playing in. But it's not looking good for the bottom echelon of these teams, but it's looking real good up here on the top for these top teams going on right now. Beside the point, hope you enjoyed my analysis of it all, kind of going through and again learning. That's kind of what this channel is kind of about, is that you're riding along with me to kind of see and learn the stats of this year and kind of how it's going, and hopefully we both learn, both the viewers and me learn to a point to, know more about the NFL and make better content going forward, and better ideas, because I don't know how often or how much this will change, but we'll see. Anyway, beside the point, I think that's all I got for you. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below about how I can improve and how we can improve the content here on this channel. StraightA Dawson is out. Take care, guys.